Hello, and welcome to Character Study Survivor Podcast. My name is Tristan Fleur. That's Tyler Clives. We're talking today about Colby Donaldson, who might be the most popular player of Survivor ever. We'll get into it.
Probably, maybe
We're
the
going to
most
talk.
recognizable name in Survivor
Mhm.
ever.
I mean, he was on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, yeah.
You never know. Well, he's not a Hershey bar, but I think this episode's going to be pretty sweet throughout. If you're new to the channel, welcome to Character Study. We're producers and storytellers in the sports realm that love Survivor and the characters that make the show great. We do this show because we're trying to answer the question of what makes a great Survivor character. No questions asked. Colby's a great Survivor character. I think that's a really easy thing to talk about, right? Make sure to follow us on Instagram and like and subscribe here on YouTube. It really helps us out. Make sure to check us out on Spotify if you want an even easier way to listen to us. Everything helps in terms of our mission of trying to create great conversations and talking points about Survivor. Tyler, you ready to get into our conversation on Colby? I think we've had a great week. We talked about Camilla on Tuesday. We talked about Genevieve on Wednesday, and now we're talking about Colby. And then we're finally out of the blood moon, and we're on to the jury.
Yeah, we're really doing a good job of getting through the season 50 characters, and there'll be more characters to come after this that we'll talk about on this podcast. We're looking forward to this, but 4 seasons from Colby that we need to talk about today. So let's not waste any more time.
Yep. Well, Colby is 51 years old on season 50. He was 26 on the Australian Outback. That's as old as Rizzo was on season 50,
Yeah.
which is something that is brought up. 29 years old in his second appearance on Survivor All Stars, and 35 years old on Heroes versus Villains. He's a rancher and a welder, former auto customizer, placed 15th on Survivor 50, was the runner-up in Australian Outback, 12th on Survivor All-Stars, and 5th on Heroes versus Villains. Why don't you say we take it to the Outback, right?
Yeah, let's start this podcast basically where Survivor started in its second season. Yeah, Colby in this season, Survivor's already a phenomena. The finale was one of the most watched episodes of reality of television
Yeah.
live and
Of like a non-sporting event television
yeah,
ever.
right. I mean, just absolutely blew up, and it leads into a very important season in the show's history. In season two, can the show still hold up? Can the viewers stick around? Can they love the characters like they did in the first season? And the character that is latched onto the most in the season is the character that we get to talk about today. It's Colby, all the way back in what, 2001 or
Hmm.
2002? This maybe aired in
Uh,
2001.
I'm gonna be honest, when you were talking about a character that stuck in our hearts, I thought you were really talking about Mad Dog.
Well,
We got a lot. Yeah, I mean, Madeline Hershey. She's great.
wow.
But anyway,
Did not think that was going to come up today.
we're just going to give the spark notes on a lot of these seasons because there are 4 seasons. We don't want to keep you here forever, right? We want to be the easy listening podcast that you're listening to this summer. So let's talk about the first and probably most formidable thing about his game on the Australian Outback, at least from a personal perspective. Let's talk about his relationship with Jerry, the original Black Widow herself. There's a lot that I want to talk about with Jerry. I think we're going to have to do a separate Jerry episode at some point, which I'd be more than happy to do. I really wish she was
Hmm.
on 50, just because she's a great character, complex character. It's kind of like having peanut butter without jelly, with Colby without Jerry. But we'll talk about his relationship with Jerry here on Australian Outback. Starts out as a maybe mutual flirting, and it very quickly becomes one-sided.
Yeah. Yeah. You think it's going to be another one of those, or I guess really like a first in Survivor. Oh, the flirting is really going to go somewhere. Yeah, it does go somewhere, but quite the opposite way that you really
Goes down
want it to go.
under.
Yeah. There you go. Well said there. Yeah. Um, and the audience sides with Colby in this in a huge way. It's what makes him one of the most popular characters at the time. And a lot of it is unfortunate looking back on it. Like things Colby says probably wouldn't fly the best in today's world when talking about a relationship with someone. Uh, but that's not to say like anything terrible about who Colby is as a person. It's just times were different back then. So like watching back on it, you might like if you watch it now, you're like, why did people like lean in and love that as much? But at the time, that's just how it was, and people gravitated towards Colby
Hmm.
and found that love in him, found the joy in him. We'll get into that too, and yeah, that's ultimately what led to Colby being on this pedestal that he is today.
Well, and also part of the reason people loved Colby was because he is a transcendent confessionalist. One of the
Yes.
best in the show's history, which is crazy because I think he's incredibly underrated. You talk about great
Hmm.
confessionalists. I don't know if Colby's in the first five people you name, and he should be. I mean, you talk about some of his. He thanks God he's a Texan, talking about the Texas flag that he brings as his luxury item, which they use as a tarp. You talk about the I ain't no Hershey bar. You talk about if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. I mean, the one-liners are endless with Colby. It leads to great confessionals. He's really good at connecting with the audience. And that's something that I think really endeared him to people to a point that I don't think we've ever seen and we will never see again with a Survivor Castaway in terms of audience relationship with a character.
Yeah. I mean, it's just more viewership, more eyes on it. And then at the time, also, more people cared about the challenges.
Hmm.
And that was an area Colby was particularly strong in, was
Set
those
the record.
challenges. Yeah, set the record for all of that. And yeah, that's all those things combined is the perfect storm for a perfect Survivor character in the perfect time that still, although some things about all the early seasons may not age as well as you'd like them to, the characters and their stories can still age the same, and it's all there. So, yeah, season one, he definitely has that rise to the top. Obviously, he gets more opportunities after Survivor, wanting to be an actor, curbs his own enthusiasm, like all
Post
those
Top
things.
Shot, does all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff.
Hmm.
I think a lot of this was Colby's very meta understanding of how television worked at the time. He was very aware of how he was going to be perceived because he knew how Borneo was
Yep.
perceived.
Hmm.
He takes Tina to the final two because he knows that if he took Keith, then he would win, but would he be seen as somebody who's maybe not as strong, right? Because he doesn't beat
Hmm.
the strong competitor. Um, I really think this is a fascinating thing to talk about. We don't have all the time, but I don't think Colby has the cultural success if he takes Keith here, just because of the way the world works. I mean, he won five immunity challenges. That's all well and good. It's a record that still stands today. But I still don't think that his cultural impact. I mean, literally, people were naming their kids after Colby.
Hmm.
Their children. That's their name forever.
Yeah.
Like, and granted, kid names have gotten crazy now. That's a whole other thing we can talk about at some point. But I, people were naming their kids Colby because of a reality TV show character.
Yeah. It goes to show how impactful characters can be in our lives. Yeah, that's just a big example of it. But again, at the time, this is kind of a spoiler for the last question you I asked, but I mean, my board already kind of spoils it here. But like, villains and anti-heroes weren't looked upon as fondly at the time. You kind of had to be the hero. Like, looking back to one season prior, Richard Hatch is a villain in that season, and he wins that season playing the game hard and with deception, and he's looked upon by a lot of the fans at the time with hatred. Now he gets more respect for his game, but at the time he didn't. Colby realizes he needed to be the original hero and stick to that by keeping Tina, bringing Tina to the end. So you're right. It is like a sacrifice play for for the game, trying to lead to future endeavors, which he ultimately did get. Um, and then has a bit of a downfall, and then comes back to the Colby that we knew and love.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's true. Richard Hatch really did pay his dues then. He didn't always pay his dues, though.
Yeah, did he
Uh,
though?
we go into Survivor All Stars, a season that Richard and Colby are on.
Hmm.
Colby is probably the easiest casting choice of all time for this, right?
Yeah.
There are some people in All Stars that you're like, really? Colby was not one of them.
Yeah.
Short time on All Stars, was not on there for long. Tribe didn't go to Tribal for much. Really bonded with Lex, bonded with a few other people. And Colby thinks he has Jerry's blind side in motion after a tribe swap. The first ever tribe or the first ever returning player season, and there's these relationships, right? This is a major tribe swap. The relationship with Jerry comes in from previous relationships. This might be the one of the earliest previous relationships ever talked about in the show.
Hmm.
Obviously, it comes in big with Boston Rob and Lex later in the season and all that kind of stuff, and Big Tom and all sorts of stuff. But this is really like the first prior relationship that we've seen on the show that is really fleshed out here in this group. And Colby thought he had Jerry's blindside in motion, but Jerry got Colby here and leads to a rather unceremonious exit for the original hero of the show in something I'm sure at the time was pretty shocking.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I was too young at the time to understand how shocking this was. I don't know if started watching the show yet at this point. A couple of seasons later is when I really started to get into it. But yeah, I mean, it has to be like your favorite character. Like at this point, you have a kid who's 5, 6 years old, named after this.
Not five or
Not
six.
five,
This kid's like two.
2. Yeah, 2 years old.
This kid,
Um,
I was gonna say, I was like, hold on, what is this malarkey?
Yeah. That's more like when
That's
we get to
bollocks, and
heroes
you know it.
villains. That's right. It is bollocks. Thanks for calling me out on that. Yeah, it'd be like more heroes villains, Colby. They're probably
Yeah,
like
there we
they're
go.
no.
That's what I'm talking about. All right.
Um yeah, but still you got a child who's had the same name for 2 years and you're so excited to see this player come back and yeah, I mean it's got to be shocking, especially by the person who he was against in the first season, who a lot of people were against Jerry for unfair reasons, and I mean that could just continues to be the
Mm-hmm.
case as we move along. Um, but yeah, I mean it's a defining relationship in the entire show, not just because it's early on, but because it extends through multiple seasons in a direct way. And each time the relationship changes and just changes until now. Colby says on 50 that he wanted Jerry to be there. If there's one player that could have been there, he would have loved for Jerry to be there, which is just not what you would think at the time
All
of
the
the
feels.
Outback and not at the time I think after watching All Stars.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, yeah, it's such a dynamic relationship between two wonderful characters.
Well, do you think there's a hypothetical toddler watching Survivor All Stars that turns to his mom and is like, "You named me after a loser.
Yeah,
Got
but
taken out in 12th place. Who is
that
this?"
kid, that kid's having a joyful life now, though, Tristan.
That is true. That is true. Let's go
25
on
years
to heroes
later.
versus villains. Probably the low point in Colby's Survivor career in terms of his enjoyment of the show.
Hmm.
So it starts with the opening challenge, where he is frog marched by Coach. And there's one thing about Coach. He's not going to let you forget about it. Coach
Mm-mm.
is someone where if you beat Coach, it's not looked at as a big thing. They're like, hey, you beat Coach. He's a goofy guy. If you lose to
Hmm.
Coach, it's the worst thing in the world because you're constantly going to be reminded about it.
Yeah.
And the Heroes Tribe doesn't really take anything against Colby here, but it is very much talked about on the Villains Tribe and very much talked about in online communities. And up until 50, I think that was the leading image of Colby in a lot of people's heads.
Hmm. Yeah, it certainly was. Yeah, and it just goes to show how one season can kind of change everything. Yeah, Colby's looked at upon that he's like this unstoppable force, at least physically, right? He gets played
Hmm.
by Jerry in their previous season, but like physically, like Colby has to still be who he is. It's always what we've known him as. Um, and that's what puts the reality in reality TV is over time, like not only you're going to lose some of your physical ability, but you're going to lose some of your love for like the game. It's like any anything that you really enjoy sometimes can be soured. Like if you like sometimes work can um it can influence it. Like you love something and you start doing it for work and you still love it, but you love it less than you did because you have these responsibilities and these emotional taxes that come alongside with it. That is what he carries. And it doesn't mean that love is gone, but it's diminished. It doesn't mean that love can't come back because it can, and it will if you stick around long enough. This is just a low point in which Colby had with his love for the show, and it shows,
Well, James even calls him Superman in a fat suit.
right? Just mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah,
this is like
about it as indicative as you can get right there.
this is like Broncos Russell Wilson level of disappointment here with Colby, at least in terms of
Yeah.
the physical side, and then you go into the strategic side. The game has passed him by at this point. He
Hmm.
literally asked Candace, "Who are these people in the premiere?" Rough premiere from the Colbster here.
Hmm.
And then you get later into the season after a lot of, I mean, he tags on to this plan to save him that JT and Tom Westman cook up, which is the coldest line in Survivor history from Tom Westman. Tomorrow we make our apologies. Tonight we make our move. I'm not kidding. I might get that tattooed on my body somewhere someday. Like that
It's just
is,
like
it's
any,
unbelievable.
you could take that into any any game you play, board game, whether it be serious, your championship game. Just say that to the people around you, and they'll run through a wall.
That's an Uno cheat code right there.
Yeah,
+4. All right. And then he
reverse
gets on
card.
this reward, the Treasure Island reward. Um, they go to Robert Louis Stevenson's house. He gets to share a bed with Danielle and Amanda, two good-looking
Hmm.
women. Pretty good
Hmm.
night for the Colbster. Except while watching Treasure Island, in the bowl of popcorn, there is an idol clue, and Danielle and Amanda proceed to wrestle for it. And when they try to break up the argument by asking Colby, he says the immortal words, "I was watching Treasure Island," which is just an amazing, amazing moment. And really, if Amanda ends up with this idol, I think things change in this season. So this actually does
Oh
turn
yeah,
out to be a big moment.
it does. I want to ask you this about that moment and about other
Hmm.
moments in season two. This is something we'll get to as we talk more about this season. Do you think there's any intentionality here from Colby, or do you think that this is just him saying, "I'm done with this game right now. We got to move on"?
I think that's exactly it. I There might be a little, I think he might see the writing on the wall and just be like, "Hey, heroes are kind of getting picked off." But even at this point, the heroes aren't even picked off that much. Rupert's still in the game.
Hmm.
Amanda's still in the game. Is this at the JT vote? Is this the reward before that?
So around then, I can't remember what episode it is, but
Regardless, I mean, there is all the strategy in the world to going with Danielle here, and it works in the fact that he's the last hero standing, just not for the reason that is a good one, just that he's the weakest hero. Um, but yeah, I've never thought about it that way. I think I always have just uh, read it as he's just kind of done, like I think Colby's a guy who says what he means, and he was watching Treasure Island.
hmm there's also points in the season where he says what he means in a way that's opposite of what the fan perception of him is when it comes to heroes villains. Like he has this perception that he kind of just gave up and that he wasn't trying, that he was just milking it. And yeah, he was watching Treasure Island instead of focusing on the game. And yeah, I think there's some extent to that are true. But I disagree with the sentiment that we get a lot of times about Colby in this season. I think he's playing hard until the end. He's never been a strategy guy. He's never been the guy that's going to lead in strategy. And when he loses what he's known for in terms of physical ability, yeah, it's tougher to define that likability from an audience perspective, but he's still doing what he can, trying to piece some strategy together of which he knows. That strategy ultimately being that I'm just going to fly under the radar. And I'm going to, even though it is true that I don't care as much, I can lean into that. And especially as the heroes start to go down, I need to lean into that to get as far as possible in this game. And in the episode he goes home, he's making a case for himself. He says he's not one to quit. He is not going to do that. And ultimately, he plays hard until the end. If he gets to the end, if he's the only hero, who's to say he can't win that game? There's a lot of heroes that could have been voting for him that would have rooted for him simply because of the name of the tribe he was on. I think he was in a better spot than people give him credit for in the season. I think he played a better game than he did. I think he had a better attitude than what a lot of people say about him, just looking back on it retrospectively. So that's kind of my rant on Colby's Heroes vs. Villains game. I do think there's lots of negativity in there, but with that, I think there's more than a glimmer of positivity and effort.
I think that's fair. He talks about this in the reunion show about how, in the Australian Outback there was more place to roam, to spread out, and that like legitimately might be the biggest area they've ever had for a season in terms of like exploration. I think he would have gone crazy in Africa.
Hmm.
But and then they're a little bit more sequestered now, not like Big Brother sequestered, but a little bit more sequestered, in terms of their area, campus smaller, all these things. I think he felt just a little claustrophobic in a certain sense. But also, I just, I don't know. I think that this was kind of a wake up call for him. And I'm really happy this happened because the Colby we get on season 50 is really phenomenal. Um, but this is just something that I think is a really fascinating conversation about where his headspace was. He has the fight with his brother, Reed at the water challenge. Damn it, Reed.
Yeah.
All that. It's
Um,
just there's just a lot of things there that just lead me to believe that this was just kind of where his head was at. And there's no shame in that, right? We all have good days, we all have bad days. We work in sports. Something I've learned in my time working with sports is like head coaches have bad days too. The people that you always expect to have a good day, like with Colby, they're going to have bad days. We just judge them harsher because we expect so much, right? It's like if somebody on the end of the bench has a great moment, like we're gonna celebrate them, but if they don't do anything, we're not gonna be like, wow, they sucked. But
mhm.
if Victor Wembanyama, right, has a turnover at the end of game two of the NBA Finals, that's not gonna turn out as well for Victor, right? That's the thing a lot of us remember. Not the
Yeah.
fact that he had dominated a lot of that series.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, die a hero, live long enough to become the villain.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of where Colby's story feels like it's going to end, but there's more. I
Mm-hmm.
think there was always more that we could have gotten from Colby. And the reaction when he's announced on the 50 cast, some people were really excited. A lot of people, though, were saying, do we really need to see Colby again? Does he really care about Survivor still? And again, to that
I was
point,
intrigued.
I was always on the side of, I'm really excited to see Colby again. He's a classic character who I think has the foresight and is able to realize that he was not portrayed in the best light and that he did not give off the best impression that he wanted to leave with people. That's why he wanted to come back, why he cared so much about the game. And that scene from the very first moment that they step onto the island until the very last moment when his torch is snuffed, and even after.
Let's get into his Survivor 50
Yeah.
gameplay because there's a lot to it. Forms an alliance with Stephanie, Genevieve, Kyle, and Q. I don't think anyone expected Colby the one that was leading the charge to make this alliance, which is
Hmm.
really showing how much that he has grown as a player. I think I first started getting excited hearing about Colby coming back for season 50 was the interview Tina Wesson did with Brandon Donlin, where she said she had been kind of coaching Colby and telling him about things in the new era. He had been watching seasons. He was really getting excited and into it again. And he wanted like redemption. I had heard a report that apparently when he saw Probst on FaceTime or on Zoom, he started breaking down in tears. And I was like, okay, this could be something. And oh boy, was it. Um, his relationship with Rizzo is a really interesting thing this season. And I think this was the first moment that wasn't like direct nostalgia. that I was just like, wow, this season has the potential to be really, really good if they do it right. And this was a great moment. Um,
Yeah.
went from just being like this Rizzo kid is annoying to viewing him as a son. And man, that is cool. That loser kid has grown up to be Rizzo. No, no, just
What did Rizzo do?
no. I was meaning the kid that saw him as a loser, and I said loser kid. Rizzo
Yeah.
Rizzo is not a loser.
hmm
But you know what I mean.
I think Colby is seeing every part of himself in Rizzo
Hmm.
as this game goes on. Obviously, the impression early is what you see of him, of Colby in Heroes Villains, that negativity sometimes can be nagging and annoying, this young kid that Colby once was. And then you start to see, maybe not like the challenge me side of him come out, but you see the confidence that he has and how much he does care about the game in like the human side of who he is that really made Colby so popular. And he starts to realize, like, if I want people to give me another chance after my last season, I need to give this kid a chance as well. And he does that, and that's not easy to do. I mean, it's easy to get stuck in your ways, especially if you feel like you've learned a story about who you are, and that people are just going to be in different phases of life in general, and you need to show grace for that because a lot of times you found yourself in that same phase at some point. You can't judge on that. You need to you need to be a role model and to help in any small way. And sometimes they can help you as well. Rizzo gives Colby some advice. Colby doesn't take well to that at the time, but I mean it is a give and take relationship that they have, and it's something special.
I think it's a very retrospective, self-aware Colby that you
Yeah.
see, and that's through the entire season. I also think that's why he gets along with Genevieve really well, because I
hmm
think that's a very Genevieve thing in season 52. Very retrospective, very self-aware, very knowing how she wants to recover from her mistakes. I think Colby's kind of the same way, in terms of trying to recover from his mistakes and trying to change his image, right?
hmm
He goes on a journey, loses a vote. It's an unfortunate circumstance there. I actually thought Savannah wasn't going to be tall enough to reach the top. I thought Colby was going to win by default.
Yeah.
Colby's the one that suggests looking through Aubrey's bag.
hmm
This is a different Colby, and I'm here for it. Strong start and challenges. I mean, him just dragging that snake across felt like it was
Vintage.
2001 again. It's
hmm
crazy. Um, and Colby is definitely the most wounded player on season 50.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I mentioned I say wounded, not
Kyle.
warrior. He's the Oakbound warrior, but he's
Well,
wounded.
Kyle was more wounded, but
No, okay, that's fair. Is a torn Achilles worse than a staph infection?
I'm gonna say yes.
Hey, look, staph infections are deadly.
Yeah, but I mean, it was they caught it before, so wait, that's
I'm just talking
another
medically
time.
here.
Yeah, both are bad.
I
Both are
watch
bad.
Scrubs, okay?
Yeah.
Anyway, uh, you want to go to the tribe swap? Talk about this alliance with Joe and Coach, because I think this was like on paper what everyone was expecting. This
Yeah.
was the Zoom alliance that we had heard about, but um, there's some really interesting stuff here with his relationship with Joe and Coach.
Yeah, it is. You said it. It's the more expected alliance. It's the more people you think Colby would align with. But yeah, that's what makes it makes it interesting now because you realize Colby was able to align with those other people, but he still has that same mentality that he did in previous games, and he's able to, even though what happened in Heroes vs. Villains with Coach, he pushes past that. They're able to be friends and to laugh about it. He's able to relate to Joe and who he is in his life and how he wants to portray integrity and portray himself to the world and to fans and to his family and all of that. And yeah, it becomes another powerful relationship that Colby is able to have. And he becomes one of the most insulated players in the season, just like we talked about with Genevieve.
Hmm. Well, let's talk about him getting this Oakbound Warrior nickname because I'm still not sure if Colby is like dead serious or he's trying not to crack up. when coach is telling him this. Maybe a little bit of both. Because it
Hmm.
does seem kind of genuinely sincere when he's talking about it. But at the same time, it also kind of seems like Colby's trying not to burst out laughing.
Yeah. No, it definitely does. He has like the serious tone in his voice while having the
The
devious
smirk on his
smirk on
face,
his
yeah.
face. Yeah, it's all kind of there in one. Yeah, but I think he does respect this moment. He realizes like the silliness of who Coach is, and he's willing to lean into it in the moment, realizing that this is how Coach is going to portray a relationship on the show. This is an important moment for me to create a relationship, even though it can be funny in the moment and funny to look back on.
But Colby was here to play. Make no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He might be with Coach and Joe, but and this might be the honor and integrity idea. Colby wasn't in on it. If you look closely, if you hear him talk about it in his exit press, he wasn't committed to this idea. He was going to use
Yeah.
it to his advantage. He was going to use it for leverage. And Colby was the ringleader of this majority alliance. And it's all well and good if you're talking about like this honor and integrity thing and you're like the last person in this alliance, right? Like that's one thing. But if you're the ringleader of this alliance, it completely changes how this game is played.
Hmm.
Colby is in a great spot going into the Blood Moon. He has Joe, Coach, Steph, Chrissy, Jonathan, and Genevieve all working for Colby.
And potentially Q and Rizzo as well.
I
Potentially.
mean, like you said, Colby's insulated. He's not
Well, I
just
guess Q's
insulated.
gone at that point, but he had him, you know?
He's not just
Yeah.
insulated. Colby is actively running parts of this game,
Hmm.
which is something we don't get to see, and it's super unfortunate. I'm going to pull a Tina Wesson here. Where's Colby in
Yeah.
parts of the edit, right? Like, there are parts that, we get a ton of Christian, we get a ton of Devons, we get a ton of other players, and they make it further than him, so fair enough. But I could have used maybe a sprinkle strategy Colby in here just to spice it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think the things we get from Colby are great though. I think
Oh, no doubt.
it's what makes the early part of season 50 so memorable and what was so special about it at the time.
Hmm.
Even going back to the very first moment of the season where they're all standing, they got off the barge and it's super windy, and you can just see in Colby's face as he's saying that he's happy to be back here and that people named the kids after him. He's getting that recognition that he genuinely cares. He's not putting on an act. Sure, he's had time over the years to be in the acting world. That's maybe what he came onto Survivor with the intentions of doing. But there's no acting going on here at all. He genuinely loves the game. It's that love we talked about before. You love something, you do it so often, it becomes work for you. It becomes like mentally taxing. You lose it, but you get away and it's back. You can just see it in every move that he makes, every step he takes, whether it be something good or something bad. Even if it be something that he stepped on that made him get that staph infection, he still did it with joy.
Well, in the match chat, he says he's in a period of reflection, and it's super obvious to see. I mean, you can say that all you want, right? But we're not always going to believe it, right? Like to a
Hmm.
certain extent, people say that kind of stuff all the time. And are they actually going to act on it, though? Like, it's
Right.
one thing to recognize these things about yourself, but if you don't put them into practice, it's not actually doing anything.
Yep.
And you can definitely see these in Colby. His physical ailments really start showing up around this time. He tells right off the bat he's got a bad eyesight, he's got a bad left ear in the scene with Genevieve, which is really fun. Um, he hits his head hard in the blindfold challenge.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've definite
I was worried
concussion,
about an evacuation there.
definite concussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something.
And then his foot, they don't really talk about it. He was on a production trail and was walking barefoot and because he had actually hyperextended his toe in another challenge, the boat challenge, and ended up having a really nasty staph infection. They said one of the worst they'd ever seen.
Yeah, it's something that doesn't get mentioned on the show other than a mention of it, of why he sits out of a challenge and why he's in pain when he falls off. in the Blood Moon
Yeah,
episode.
the chimney sweep challenge,
Yeah, the
which
chimney
might
sweep.
be the worst challenge for that kind of injury.
Yeah, yeah, it's one of those where it's like that's another example. Like a Colby of old might just step down and say, "For the good of my foot here, for the good of not being in pain, I'm not going to take this fall." But he's willing to take the fall in order to enjoy the ride.
And a hard fall at that.
Yeah, he's down for a while. But he goes
That
up with that.
was that was a
Yeah.
hit.
hmm
Um, all right, so after the lost vote that he has in the premiere, plus the injury, he's a sitting duck at this Blood Moon. But I'm
hmm
impressed in the way Colby played this.
Yeah.
Tries to pitch to Dee that if she saves him, then he can get her in with the honor and integrity group, which is a great pitch to Dee.
The right
Um,
pitch.
it just doesn't work. And we now know that if he wasn't voted out that night, he would have been pulled the next day, which is something they float around for a minute. Dee and Emily are talking about this idea, and Suri asks them if they gamble. But I, I think this is also just a moment of Suri brilliance, knowing that Colby's the head of the snake, not coach. All these things,
Yeah.
but I mean, Colby really like. I guess it lessens the blow, right? Knowing he was going to be pulled from the game anyway, but that didn't make anything less sad in his exit. I mean, he did everything he possibly could have here.
I was watching this exit again today. Obviously, knowing we were going to talk about it, and I couldn't get myself to watch it a second time because I
Mhm.
was just so heartbroken by it. So it was the second time I'd ever seen it, and I like the first time I think I was so sad I didn't pick up on the music in this moment. Um, and I'd
Did we
heard it
get a
talked
little
about like
didgeridoo?
you get like the old time Survivor exit like torch snuff music, but with such a sad and somber tone that it brought me back to where I was the night that happened. And, I mean, and that's the perfect time to do it for a character who's had these ups and downs in Survivor, and there is that sadness there. That this is the Colby we saw 25 years ago. He was back, and now he's gone too soon. And that's sometimes the reality of life. So I mean, I encourage you to go back and watch that moment again. I think it is, even though it caused outrage in the Blood Moon, it is a great moment in the show and the moment that probably is the best ending moment that Colby could have gotten on this show. Arguably even better than winning because he's able to find the joy in not succeeding, and that's his story on Survivor.
It's hard to say on what's the better exit if it's Colby or Ozzy. Both in
hmm
different ways. They're both heartbreaking, but in different ways. And I think they're
Yeah.
both expertly done. Um, one last time, Donaldson, instant
Mm.
tears,
You gotta stop. Can't
instant
cry.
tears.
I think
Uh,
we both admitted. I don't know. I mean, maybe you can say you had allergies at this point, but I mean, I had tears in my eyes while I was watching this. I
if
grew
you
up on
don't
the
feel
show.
anything in that, I don't go back to where you came from. Like, if you don't feel anything in that, you have not been watching the show long enough.
hmm
It's a failure to recognize how significant of a moment that is.
hmm
Not just for the show, but of who Colby is. This is maybe the most popular male character ever. Tim or
hmm
Boston Rob. It's one of those two. And he just exited in the most sentimental, somber, and celebratory way possible. I don't think it's hyperbole to say it's a top 20 moment in the history of the show.
I won't disagree with you there. I think because of the episode it's in, it will always be looked upon as
Hmm.
something that's negative.
But in a vacuum.
But it's not only about who Colby is and who like how he's come from where he was to who he is. It's who he's going to be in his life
Mhm.
and how Survivor can change you in your life. How it has changed Colby. It's possibly the best example that we can have from beginning to end of how Survivor can change you. it's a legendary story. He's a legend that will forever go down in the history of the show.
Let's get into some questions here because I think there's a lot we can get into here about Colby. We've said a lot, I think we're both going to start crying if we talk about his exit and even more. But what was your first reaction to Colby coming back? We talked about like how we were, you know, uh, both kind of like skeptical. Okay, we'll see how this goes. At least that was my reaction. I know you're a little bit more positive. What did he do that changed the opinion of people?
Yeah, to answer your first part of the question, like we talked about before, I was excited to see him come back. I had avoided all the Reddit spoilers and all that as to who was going to be on the season. So the first time I saw the cast was when Jeff actually announced it. Um, and I had an audible reaction when I saw Colby. I didn't expect him to be someone that was going to come back. And I was really excited to see that. And as to how he changed the people's minds, I think he just brought people back to where they were either in 2001 or the first time they watched Survivor, the Outback. Like it's just the emotional connection you have with the show and with real characters, real humans, is like nothing else that you can ever find in life. And seeing parts of who someone was 20 years ago is also seeing parts of who you were 20 years ago or 2 years ago when you watched the show and fell in love with it, or, 10 years ago, whatever it may be. And you just need to find that love and that joy for the show and the joy for characters. That's where it comes from. And yeah, I don't think it's much more complicated than that.
That's the secret to enjoying Survivor, in my opinion. If you can fall in love with the characters, you're locked in for life.
Hmm.
To enjoy maxing. You know, I
One way to
I
put it.
I do. I have another silly question that I'll ask,
Hmm.
just because I made that joke. So let's say Aubrey does not get on this season. Let's say Amanda Kimmel's on the season. Do we get a fight between Amanda Kimmel and Genevieve at the Zach Brown reward? And is Colby the person that's saying, I'm just listening to Toes. I'm just listening to
Yeah,
Chicken Fried.
yeah, colder weather, or don't worry about it. I don't, whatever the name of that song is, I can't remember. Um, yeah, maybe he's just saying, guys, I just want to listen to Zach right now, like instead of getting in between that.
I can't
There's
wait
a,
to talk about D too next
yeah,
week
oh yeah,
because
really good.
I'm gonna spoil the lead right now. I think D's the best part of the Zach Brown reward, and she's not even on it.
I actually think Colby has an argument for that too. I think
Mm,
he gives a great quote,
that's
especially in
true.
retrospect, of saying, if I go out tomorrow, this made it worth it because I found this moment and I found these people and I found this show again. And ultimately, he does go out pretty soon after that. So that's something that I'm glad we kind of brought up, even in a
Yeah,
joking manner, because I think it does lean into the
yeah.
theme we've been going with.
We're gonna talk about rewards too in the D episode. That's something I want to
Mhm.
talk about.
Oh
Bring
yeah,
back cool rewards.
yeah.
Uh, let's get that started on social media now. Maybe we can get enough traction to get it on
Here we go.
53.
Great.
Why is Colby so beloved? And I think this is hard. I think to a certain extent, to answer my own question here a little bit, he's a Texan. He's an all-American boy. He's the spirit of 2001, right? Like in the immediate aftermath of 2001, right? You have
Hmm.
9/11. He's an American hero in a lot of ways, even from reality TV. He's everywhere. He's on, this is a time where the early show was a huge part of the Survivor experience. This was a time where a lot more people were watching Survivor. And I think it's easy to root for the all-American Captain America figure, right? So I think that's kind of where, but I'm interested to hear your rationale.
Yeah, I think you honestly hit exactly what I would say as to the earlier parts of it. So I would say to you,
Hmm.
what makes people love modern Colby?
It's a good question. If you're talking about heroes versus villains, I don't think there's a lot to love there. At
Hmm.
least a lot of people that see. I think if you examine it closer, definitely there are moments. Um, And I think it's a great chapter if you look at all four of his together. Like it is a great lower chapter. Like if you almost need it for season 50 to be as satisfying as it is.
Hmm.
Season 50 of Colby might be the most satisfying run for a player ever. In terms of a player that doesn't win, doesn't do particularly well in the season, like it's satisfying to see Colby go out the way he does, even if it's bittersweet. It is satisfying in a way.
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's the most, but I think it's the most long lasting for
That's true.
sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh,
It's
But I think a lot of it is kind of like you were saying. I can't say it any better than you said it, but when you're watching a show, no matter what show, it brings you back to something. There's a reason that whenever I move somewhere, I watch Ted Lasso. Because the first time I moved out on my own, I watched Ted Lasso in my first week there for the first time, fell in love with the show, and then every time I move somewhere, I just rewatch it. It's like a force of habit because I remember what it was like back then, right? It's about these things that we hold near and dear, like from our childhood, right? There are still things that we all watch from our childhood that none of us want to admit that we watch from our childhood, but we still do. And it's because it brings us back to a time, right? There's a huge thing of nostalgia. If you can get somebody to care about nostalgia, you've won them over as an audience. And that's exactly what Colby does. That's why CBS kept bringing him back
mhm.
because it brought you back to the heyday. I guarantee season 50 was a hugely popular season of Survivor, at least in terms of viewership, because people were tuning in for the first time in a long time because of a lot of the people that were on it. Colby has to be a top five reason as to why people tune back in. It's just math. Um, yeah. So that's my answer there. Um, what could Colby have done had he survived the blood moon? And let's say the injury is like not part of it. Let's say that his foot miraculously heals. Zach Brown's music makes it all okay, right? So what happens here? What happens with Colby? Is he in a spot like is he taken out in the duos twist? Is he uh I almost see a world where he might partner with Rizzo in that, and maybe they're not targeted or who knows, But what do you think Colby does? Because he was kind of the head of the snake. And I think
Yeah,
the only person that caught on to it was Suri.
exactly. That's exactly where I was going. I think he still has a Suri problem.
Hmm.
Suri is caught on to him, and once Suri catches on to someone, it's tough to get that away. But he has the ability to forge relationships as seen on the season, especially with someone who also is a all-time Survivor character. They know what it's like to play on the show. They know the discourse that's around the show. They know the early parts of this show. Like they've been there for a long time throughout it. I think there's definitely some relatability those two could have found, and that's a alliance that he would have needed to have formed. And if he did, if he could have gotten in with the Wizard of Oz group a little bit, even not to be the fourth member of that, but just to have some insight into where all that was going, that he could make a really long run and he could be the sole survivor of the season. But I think that was something he still had to get past.
Any other questions we think? Or are we ready to get into our final question? What do you got?
Um, I think you hit on some good ones, and we talked about a lot of them as we were talking about 50. Um, so yeah, I guess we'll just get into the question of the
Which is going
episode.
to be the easiest question maybe in the entire podcast series.
Yes, correct. It's right behind me. Colby is deemed the original hero of the show, but the question I still have to ask it, we do this for every episode, is Colby a hero, a villain, or an anti-hero? Tristan, what do you think?
He is a hero. I know that's a big shocker. I know I'm going to have to answer for that one online, but I really
Yeah.
believe it. I think it's true. I stand my truth. I don't have to explain it. Colby is a hero. Um, I'll be taking no further questions at this time.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I really want to say something to negate that, but no, there's, he is the hero. Like, I think he will forever go down as the hero of Survivor.
Hmm. Yep.
And for all the reasons we've talked about in the podcast, no need to extend it any further. I think he will be an all-time character and the all-time hero, even if the show goes on for forever and ever. He will be remembered.
No doubt. Well, I've had a great time going down memory lane talking about Colby today. We hope you have as well. Tyler, we got anything before we get out of here?
No, we made it through the Blood Moon section, so thanks for pushing through with us. We tried not to hit on the luck as much of the contestants we kind of did with Genevieve, but sometimes that's the game Survivor goes. So, yeah, we made it through, and we'll continue through the rest of season 50 and continue on from there. So,
Yep. Next week we got Dee and Chrissy talking about two pretty interesting podcasts on
mhm.
two very different ends of the um, spectrum. I think Dee really helped her resume as an all-time Survivor player, and I think Chrissy really hurt her resume as an all-time Survivor player. But we'll talk about that more next week. We thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you like, comment, and subscribe here on YouTube. We hope you follow us on Instagram, be a main character, interact, start these conversations. Why do you love Colby? If you know somebody that loves Colby, send it to them. If you've made it this far in the video, you're a Survivor super fan, so make sure to send it to all your super fan friends. Let's start some community here. We hope you enjoyed. We thank you so much. We'll see you next week.